For the Los Angeles Times. Thank you for being here for this conversation today about May, December. Please join now in welcoming screenwriter Samy Burch. Actor Charles Melton. Actor and producer Natalie Portman. Actor Julianne. And director Todd Haynes. Samy, I'll start with a question for you. You wrote this script with the hope of getting representation. Yes. It then made it onto the blacklist, and obviously it's had the life that it's had. What has that been like for you to see this movie take on this incredible life?
It's been pretty surreal, as you can imagine. Even up until this very moment, it's been quite a surreal experience and an honor.
And Natalie, the script came to you, and as I understand it, you were the one who thought to send it on to Todd. What was it about the script that you thought was right for him?
Well, first of all, the script was extraordinary when it came across my desk. I don't really have a desk, but when it came across my bed, I read it lying down. I had never read anything quite like it. It was so subtle in all of these very complex relationships and was able to convey so much with such spare, beautiful dialogue. And of course, I kind of always think of Todd for everything because I've admired him for so long and have wanted to work with him and dreamed of working with him for so long. So I had sent him things before that did not spark his interest and very kindly declined in the past, but I kept trying because, dream big. And then it was just incredible that he took to it because it's so, he brought so much incredible vision and beauty to an already visionary, beautiful story.
And Todd, for you, when this script comes to you, it has such a distinctive tone, and I'm curious how much of that was on the page.
There's so much in the way the story is built, how the characters are built, how the sort of three acts of this film, the coherence of it thematically, that, I think as we were making it, it kept resounding. Things well beyond your first remarkable experience reading it kept getting deepened, and the roots of the concept kept penetrating. But what was interesting about the script is it really trusted the reader. And so it let the reader kind of loose a bit and navigating all of these themes. And I love that about it. And it was like, it made you uncomfortable. It made you, look back a page and go, wait a minute, and read it again. And you're shifting constantly in how you feel about these characters and how you feel about the events that are unfolding in front of you. Your trust in Elizabeth, of course, you think she's going to be this reliable narrator taking you into this world, and that radically is undermined through the course of the script. But for me, it was a challenge of how to do something on the screen, in a visual medium, in a cinematic medium, that took that sense of a kind of heightened interpretive state and gave that to an audience in a theater, and made that a sort of compulsive pleasure in how to watch this film and watch it unfold.
And Julianne, for you and Todd have an ongoing collaboration, and what does it mean for you to be working with him again?
Oh, everything. I mean, it's not an expectation of mine that he's gonna call me. So every time he does, I'm so thrilled. And this came completely out of the blue. I mean, basically, Natalie had sent Todd the script, and then Todd talking about being able to say, I'm going to slip you a script, which is very exciting language, so I can slip something secretly. And he said, would you read it and tell me what you think? And I was like, oh my God, I do this in a heartbeat. It was so extraordinary, and the idea of doing something again with Todd, who I adore, and Natalie, who I've always wanted to work with, and it was just kind of, and such a beautiful, compelling, interesting, dangerous script about people and their relationships. I realize that I'm always compelled, I think, more by domestic dramas than anything else, because I feel like that's where we live. That's where our real dramas take place. And the danger in this piece is something that feels it feels strange and familiar at the same time, which is a testament to Samy's beautiful writing.
And Charles, I've heard Todd say that your audition for the role made him kind of reconceive of the character, and I'm so curious, kind of what was it that you saw in that character that maybe, changed Todd's mind or like brought him around on that? What did you bring into that room when you came in for an audition?
Oh man, well, I was so surprised when I found out Todd saw my audition tape, because the next round of he sent notes to my team or to Laura Rosenthal, the casting director, and they sent it to me, and my team was like, "These are notes from Todd Haynes," and I was like, "Really? They are?" And so then I sent in the next tape, and the next thing I knew, this was like a 6-week process. I was flying to New York City to do a chemistry read with Julie and Todd, and I remember standing outside the audition room, and I heard Todd and Julie talking, and I was just out there for what felt like forever. And then I walked in and walked out, and I remember walking out of that room being like, I don't know what just happened, but up to this point has been the greatest experience in my career, truly. And I just really felt this innate kind of connection to Joe. I mean, Samy's script is so beautiful, and there's so much depth in between her words with Joe, and just exploring that and understanding who this man was and this responsibility he had at such a young age, and how this would kind of manifest through his body as this kind of adaptive adult child surviving. So,
Todd, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, yeah, I kind of skipped buried the lead in that when I read the script, I got on the phone and started talking to Natalie about it, and we've been wanting to try to find something to do something together over the years, and this was so clearly, and we were both so interested in similar things about it, but her desires to push the envelope and to take audiences into places that are unfamiliar and risky, her curiosity about how people would project onto the role of Elizabeth questions about, I wonder if that's how Natalie Portman really is, and how she really works, and her excitement about stimulating those very thoughts, and her intense intellect, and her knowledge of film, and I was like, damn, this reminds me of somebody who I know very well. And here was the second role sitting there. And so going to Julianne, I was just like, these two unbelievable women, and this one I know very well, and I've worked with over the years, and this is my first experience working with Natalie. But there's so many amazing similarities about them as people, how they work, how they prepare, the kinds of things that interest them, and the kind of choices that they make. So to put them together for the first time on the screen was an amazing opportunity for me, and I think for you guys to see. But Charles it was really his audition tape before I met you that turned my head. It was not like any of the other actors who read for Joe. Charles understood something about this guy, that he was this person in formation who had been so sort of retarded in his development. And there was something so fragile and delicate that was just beginning to take its first steps out of his shell in the process of the script, and not only could I see the present tense Joe in ways as a real person in what he did, but I could also see the past, and I think I was postponing thinking about the past at that point. So I just had to catch up to these three extraordinary actors who make this film work.
And Natalie, Julianne, your performances are so intertwined. I mean, you're so hooked into each other. And how did you prepare for that? I mean, did the two of you read together? Did you rehearse together? Like, what did you do to prepare for this sort of singular entity?
Well, I think we're still learning now how telepathic we are. We keep showing up wearing like the same color.
The same color every day.
We had no rehearsal, and so we just met each other the first day. I mean, we had met kind of very vaguely and not in in-depth way over the years, but when we worked together, that was really when we got to know each other, and it was incredible to feel so at ease and so at home with Julie. She's just the greatest human, and I've looked up to her for so long, and I was so excited and also daunted by the idea of working with her, and she made me so comfortable right away and felt like loved and that we could just try anything, and it was just so fun to just push each other and try things with each other and get to say all these nasty things to each other, knowing that in real life I loved her.
It was great. It was great to have a partner in Natalie. I mean, she's just an amazing actor and a fantastic person. And as she was saying, we have kind of a little bit of a Vulcan mind meld with the color matching and everything. But it was nice, Suddenly I was like, oh wow, I really connect with this person, and we're gonna play these really interesting, diametrically opposed women, who are attracted to one another and antagonistic and somewhat seductive towards one another too. To have that kind of relationship with somebody that you really trust in a working capacity, in a personal capacity, it just made it better. It made it safer, and I think Samy's very loaded language, really silly things that you didn't think would matter, like, be careful because you could make a mistake and ruin it. That kind of stuff becomes very pointed because you're in a relationship where you can push that stuff and someone will accept it. It was a great working experience.
Because, Samy, so much of the screenplay is about what people are not saying to each other. And so how do you write to that? Like, how do you sort of write the words on set?
That's a hard question to answer. I think it's just kind of knowing that that's where the tension exists, that there are very few moments of people saying honest things in this whole movie, and it does create an uncomfortability, and I think, when I was writing, that feeling was probably a guiding light, the same one that I think I feel in the audience watching the film, that there's just this almost functioning in a similar relationship like a horror film, where instead of yelling, "Don't go in the attic," you're just like, say something truthful. Say what I know to be true, that you can feel in your body. So I think that Gracie, this character has such an impenetrability, or like there's a willful denial that's taking place, and that's what makes her so fun to write and so fun to watch. And I think everything kind of, Gracie is really the sun that everything orbits around, trying to crack the case, as he says in the movie. So I think that's where that's the tone at which the dye drops in the water, and it kind of spreads from there.
Because, Todd, the movie's so deceptive. I mean, as a viewer, like, you're never quite sure where you stand. I'm kind of getting a big kick out of it as the movie's coming out. Like, is it a drama? Is it a comedy? I know you've been having to answer the question of, like, a lot of people want to consider it camp. Like, how do you feel about that? The fact that the movie is so deceptive, and for people don't know how to take it.
What I love, what's been so sort of remarkable and unexpected, I think, about how people have responded to the movie is that I don't necessarily think we're in a place culturally that we, or generally with what is being made on TV and in films today, that people are interested in being so unnerved, and that a lot of times we kind of are checking boxes in how things are represented, and we want to feel confirmed in our moral and ethical positions and expectations about representation of this kind of person or that kind of person. And what's been so exciting, I think, for all of us is that the film invites questions and uncertainty and ill-ease and a kind of dialogue with oneself as you're watching it. And to me, this was like, this is what all the movies that turned me on to movies used to do when I was a kid, and seeing great films and being challenged by movies, you know, from Hollywood era and from the 60s and from the 70s, when I was sort of coming of age as a filmmaker, and I think took for granted the quality of filmmaking that was going on in the United States in the 1970s. And this script and this project and things I tried to apply to it stylistically and in its tone was at least an attempt to take us, return to some of those kinds of films, those examples. And audiences seem to be along for the ride in this way. It's really exciting.
Julianne, I have to ask about the lisp that your character has, because she seems to, it kind of comes and goes in the way that she kind of almost like deploys it as a weapon. And like, how did you sort of conceive of like how she would sort of articulate that lisp?
I hope it doesn't come and go. Because that was not my intention. I worked pretty hard on consistency. I think a lisp is more prominent when you say certain things. Like Natalie pointed out, the fact how interesting it is that someone with a lisp names their child Cathody. So I think that's the thing about a lisp. It only appears, you only lisp on certain consonant sounds. So that might be what you're referring to. I hope that's what you're referring to.
Yes.
Anyway. But it came about because as I was trying to figure out who this character was, and realizing that there's a somewhat in terms of her willful denial. I love how you said that. It's really true in terms of the narrative that she's projecting to the world. It's in her mind, it was a great love story between a man and a woman, right? Well, this man was 13 years old. So he was her Romeo, she was the Juliet, she was the princess. He rescued her. In order to keep that alive, that story alive, you have to make that boy a man. And you are just a girl. She's just a girl. And she's naive, and her brothers were in charge, and her dad told her what to do, and all of that, and basically he came along and rescued her from this world. So there's something very childlike about that, and even in her hyper femininity, she's very, very genderized. She sees the world as genderized, and so and on the other hand, I also needed characteristics that Natalie could come in and mimic, right? So that's a decision that Todd and I have to talk about that kind of stuff. So I'm thinking about these ideas about gender and her presentation and her childlike quality, and I'm talking to Todd about what we can do that makes Gracie so that Natalie can be Gracie. And then I called up Todd and I said, I'm thinking about a lisp. Because there's something, I made a joke to some other actresses today about how, when your kids are little and they sound like they have accents for the longest time, because they're little, because their vowels haven't formed yet, and then one day, so there's something that we associate with childhood, with that kind of speech. That's not necessarily what a lisp is, but we associate it that way. So I just thought that would be an interesting thing, and then Todd was like, okay. I think we both felt a little trepidatious about it, honestly, but that's how it happened.
And then Natalie, with Elizabeth, you get the sense that she's kind of left this charred path behind her, like the little glimpses we get of her life, like when she's talking to a boyfriend and it seems like it's not going great, and she's talking to the director and there's like, seems like there's some drama there. Like, how did you sort of conceive of who Elizabeth was, like outside of what we're seeing?
Well, I think that there is sort of like a world of no consequences, you know. I think that that's a lot of what, you know, being an actress in the world is like. People clean things up for you, people don't get mad at you if you do stuff wrong. Everyone tells you everything's great, you're great, you can do bad stuff and get away with it. And she lives like that with no consequences and no one telling her the truth, and she doesn't tell anyone the truth either. It's like it's a two-way street. So it was such a beautiful innovation that Todd brought to it, to have so much work in mirrors, because we've been talking about this a lot. Like, for the amount of time these people look in the mirrors, they're completely not self-reflective, and I think that that's something also fascinating about Elizabeth, is that she's, you know, spending all this time investigating the inner workings of someone else's heart, and she certainly hasn't done that for herself at all.
And Charles, with Joe, he has this amazing trajectory where, like, he almost gets there. Like, he seems like he's starting to understand what's been done to him and what he's gone through, but then he sort of retreats back from that. And what was that like for you, as far as like where he goes through the course of the movie?
Yeah, yeah, you know, Joe in the story, he's just on this journey of discovery, and with, you know, in this 2-week span in the film, his kids graduating, him about to be an empty nester for the first time really since he was 13, and the arrival of Elizabeth kind of just probing into his life and really asking him questions that he's never really asked himself, slowly starts to kind of rise to the surface throughout the film. You know, this kind of repressed tragedy that he doesn't quite understand, and it's pretty, you know, after the walk and talk scene with Elizabeth and Joe, he comes home, Gracie's crying about her cake and he consoles her, and then it's just, you know, towards the end, just, you know, he's just cracking just bit by bit, and it gets to the point you know, where he looks at himself in the mirror for the first time, when he's really for the first time ever seeing himself, and then musters the courage to acknowledge the question, what if I wasn't ready to be making those kinds of decisions? He's not pointing his finger or judging or anything. He just is finally asking himself this question that he's repressed or has been so unable to communicate for so long. And then leading up to the graduation scene with him kind of having this release, you know, it's a hopeful and joyful moment. And yeah, maybe a little painful, but I think, you know, there's no true joy without some pain, you know? So yeah, I think he kind of opens up a little bit. Yeah.
And Todd, can you talk about the mirror monologue with Natalie towards the end? It almost seems like this moment of psychic transference somehow, and like, how did the two of you sort of conceive of that moment?
I love the way Natalie describes that scene, and I'll let her maybe follow up with my initial inspiration for how to shoot it. And it really, when I read the monologue in the script, I was like, I'm doing this movie to do this monologue. And I thought of this Bergman film, Winter Light, from one of the classic, that trilogy with Look Through a Glass Darkly and The Silence. And there's a letter that Ingrid Thulin delivers to the lens of the camera, an unrequited love letter to the priest, central character of the movie. I don't think it happens anywhere else in the movie, where she looks right into the lens, symmetrical frame. And I remember seeing it in high school and being absolutely just transported by that scene, by the film in general, by the scene in particular, by the performance that she gave. And I was like, I want to shoot this. I want to do this movie to shoot that scene this way. And so the language of mirrors and direct address and all of the other pieces that sort of form these motifs of the film started to fall into place and made utter sense with the thematics of these people in a process of looking but not really seeing things, and the ways we all, the thing I felt when I read the script was the thing that's really universal about it, despite how exotic and strange and disturbing this story is that we all tell stories to ourselves, about our lives. And these are the stories that help us survive life. And we're rarely asked to question them or interrogate them or have them strip away. It's only when we confront real disappointment or loss or sadness that, we're sort of induced into shattering that stuff. And this is what, this felt like a very universal aspect of what this film is showing how people feel.
Natalie, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, well, we talked a lot about, what Samy really, so many of the questions that she asks in this script about performance and identity and I think for everyone performs in their lives to try and get across a certain image of themselves in different ways. Of course, a woman does it in a particularly genderized way of, look at this meal I made and what a wonderful woman I am, or look at what a motherly person, or all of these expectations that we perform constantly, or even, when we're treated badly, as women, to smile and swallow the anger, and all of that is performance. And then an actress, of course, literally performs, and so we were like, if all of these are performances, what if the time that she's being most truthful is when she's literally performing? What if that's the time she's the most honest, is when she's in performance? And to make it like this almost like channeling moment. And it was so beautiful to play the camera as a mirror, because it's like a mirror, but you're looking into the audience, so it's like reflection as performance, and the self as performance, and it was just such an incredible thing that Todd created like that.
I'm afraid with that we're going to have to wrap this up. Please, everyone join me in thanking our guest.